Importantly, some rather subtle bhakti stuff because Swami Vivekananda is going to talk about human representations of bhakti. So very much like last week's talk on non-dual bhakti or the synonym which is bhakti and jnana, we're now going to go a little deeper. And this is the last chapter of our book before the conclusion. So I had thought that we would have finished the book last time we met. So I think last week we didn't have class because we had the new moon. So the week before that, it was the beginning of spring, formally, I think, in some calendars, and we thought that we would finish Swami Vivekananda's Bhakti Yoga, but I thought I would save a little bit more for later. I didn't want to do it all in one go. But last week, I thought it was a rather significant, no, not last week, the week before last, was a rather significant discussion, I thought, on bhakti in theory and in practice. So today is going to be the second to last thing in the book. The last thing is the conclusion, and I'll save the conclusion for next week maybe, and then we'll do a review, a recap of the whole book. But let's read the last chapter together now. First, though, let's meditate on Swami Vivekananda. Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swami Netapaharine Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Oh, I meditate upon that prince amongst renunciants, Namah Shri Yatirajaya, that Vivekananda, who is divine and godlike, Vivekanandaya Suraye. He is the embodiment of consciousness, bliss, absolute, as are we all. Satchit Sukha Swarupam. Salutations to that Swami, that monk who is the Lord of renunciation and austerities. Om, peace, peace, peace. Jai Ma. So here we go. Human Representations of Divine Love by Swami Vivekananda from the Bhakti Yoga book. And this is in the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, volume 3. And it's page 107 in my book. Literally in my book. Now, too bad it's not page 108. Then you can go wild with the whole angel numbers thing. But it's 107. So let's start. Human Representations of the Divine Ideal of Love by Swami Vivekananda. It is impossible to express the nature of this supreme and absolute ideal of love in human language. Even the highest flight of human imagination is incapable of comprehending it in all its infinite perfection and beauty. So when we're doing puja, I think a very remarkable thing in the practice of puja is the constant reminder that God cannot really be conceived or spoken of. So that's why in Shankara's very beautiful Pratar Smaranam Stotram, there he says, Pratar bhajami hridi samspura, Pratar bhajami manasa vachasamagamyam, Vacho vibhati nikhila yadanugrahena, Yanneti neti vachanayar nigama avocham, Samdeva deva majama chutohura griyam. He says, Pratar, at the dawn, the first thing I do in the day is bhajami, I praise. Bhaja, ami, bhajami. That which can never be praised, which is beyond all words and thoughts. Pratar bhajami manasa vacha samagamyam. So beyond the manasa, beyond the vacha, beyond my ability to conceptualize, beyond my ability to describe, there's nothing that I can do with my mind or with my speech that could ever come near that ineffable silence and peace and stillness, the peace that passeth all understanding. That one is the reality in which words and thoughts shine. So how can words and thoughts describe that which is prior to all words and thoughts? Now this is a very important point. If reality is prior to all words and thoughts, then words and thoughts are powerless to describe it, since words and thoughts can only describe that which comes after words and thoughts, meaning anything in the realm of time, space, and causality. Since God is beyond time, space, and causality, how then can anything of time, space, and causality even come close to representing God? So therefore, there are many religions in the world that are dead set against idol worship of any kind. So it's not just about idols, it's also about attempting to represent God in this or that form. So in the Christian tradition, there was a strong pushback against the Catholic deification of saints. After all, is that not a form of idol worship? You are literally keeping idols of these fellows in your home and hoping that magically they will do something for you, like find your lost keys or something. So the Catholic worship of saints, the veneration of individuals, is a bit too idol worshipy for some Christian traditions. So the idea here, of course, behind the vitriol regarding idol worship is the feeling that you can't idolize God, you can't conceptualize God, and it would be blasphemy to try. Because any attempt at rendering God into language or rendering God into thought would be blasphemy. It would be cheapening the idea of God. It would be diluting the concept. So Sri Ramakrishna put this in a very beautiful way. He said, the Vedas, the Puranas, and the Tantras are defiled in a sense. And by defiled, here he used the word uchishta. So by defiled is meant kind of polluted. The word uchishta has a Brahmanical context. You wouldn't eat food that someone has already touched with their tongue. And I think young children know this, right? Because when a young child doesn't want her sister to eat the candy, she'll go, ah. Usually boys do this. I've noticed in my middle school. They'll do it, okay, now it's mine. Now nobody will eat it. It's called uchishta now. It's already defiled. You've already polluted it with your tongue. Ew, cooties. I don't want to eat it. So Brahmins are very careful with this kind of thing. Arguably, heck, all of India is careful about this kind of thing. That's why if you see a Hindu drink water, they'll drink like this. They'll take the cup and they'll go like... Have you seen that? Like an Indian auntie drinking from a water bottle? She will, in almost every case, prevent the lips from touching the bottle. Otherwise, it would be uchishta. Yeah, someone cooked here. Exactly. The kids, Fabricio is right, will say, leave me alone, I'm cooking. Or, we're cooked, fam. So, yeah, that idea of... So, yeah, and then there's Matangi's food. But mostly, we are very careful not to defile the food. Because that would make it uchishta. So if I touch something with my tongue, if I, touch something with my hands, or usually it's with tongue, then it becomes uchishta. So notice, the Vedas, are they not uchishta in the sense that all the mantras have been touched by the tongue? The Puranas, these stories about gods and goddesses, are they not also uchishta in the sense that they're something that we tell orally and transmit through song? And what to say of the tantras, which are literally the oral revelation of Lord Shiva, like it's coming from his mouth and from the mouth of your guru. So it's a pure mouth, but still it's a mouth nonetheless. Is that not some kind of uchishta anyway? So Vedas, Puranas, Tantras, they've all defiled the truth in a sense. It's a very Buddhistic claim, Sri Ramakrishna, the Hindu of Hindus, the worshipper of Kali par excellence, a Brahmin priest in the Kali temple, is saying truth cannot be described by Vedas, by Puranas, by Tantras. They're good, no doubt. They point the way. But that which is Brahman can never be described. And so he says the only thing that's not uchishta, the only thing that's not defiled in this way is Brahman, God, the ultimate reality. And hence Shankara says it cannot be spoken of, it cannot be thought of. And yet because of it, all words and thoughts are made possible. That is reality which is spoken of in the scripture as not this, not this. I praise that God of gods prior to all experience, the unchanging, infallible one. That's verse 2 of the Pratarasmaranam Stotram. So just like that, we get this idea that even the highest flight of human imagination is incapable of comprehending it in all its infinite perfection and beauty. So when we do puja, we have a murti of the Divine Mother or whoever else you want to worship. And you're offering flowers. But every time you offer something, in the puja, you'll see when we get to that section, there's a mantra of forgiveness. With each offering, Maya Niveditam Bhaktya, you're always saying, oh ma, but being offered with devotion, please accept this flower or this fragrance. And you say, how can I offer you fragrance? You who are the source of all fragrance. Or how can I bathe you? You whose name is verily purity incarnate. Why would you need a bath? And yet, humor me ma, out of devotion, I am deigning to bathe you now. Like that. So in the puja, there are always these moments where you check in with what you're doing and you remind yourself that God is beyond the highest flights of human imagination. So it's incapable of comprehending it in all its perfection and beauty. Nevertheless, this is an important point. Nevertheless, because if you stop here, Hinduism ends. Like you'll say, down with all the idols, down with all the words, no more Vedas, no more Puranas, no more Tantras. That's what Buddhism did. Well, until it relapsed in the Mahayana and the Vajrayana, and then all the Tantras and Puranas and Vedas came back. But at least in classical Buddhism, you throw out all the books. After all, they're words, and we're talking about silence, which cannot be spoken about. So, if you say that God cannot be conceived, and therefore should never be conceived, you have something like an Abrahamic religion, like maybe Islam or Judaism, which is very careful about idol worship. Or if you say that God cannot be spoken of, then you have more austere traditions that are not very interested in tuition or words. So Hinduism, is not like that. It's very maximalist. Insofar as Hinduism is a word that can be used to describe the various traditions that are non-Buddhistic and non-Jainic, then we can say that this nevertheless is very important. Because while God cannot be conceived, nevertheless, the followers of the religion of love in its higher as well as its lower forms, in all countries, have all along had to use the inadequate human language to comprehend and to define their own ideal of love. So the idea here is that we all have to start somewhere. Nay, more, human love itself, in all its varied forms, has been made to typify this inexpressible divine love. Man can think of divine things only in his own human way. To us, the absolute can be expressed only in our relative language. The whole universe is to us a writing of the infinite in the language of the finite. It's a beautiful claim. The entire universe is the language of the infinite. The whole of the universe is to us the writing of the infinite in the language of the finite. That's why the word for rishi is poet. In fact, kavi, the word kavi, is synonymous with rishi in the Vedic sense. So a seer is also a poet. God is the kavisha, the supreme poet. God is the one whose poetry is this entire universe. So in the language of the finite, God has hinted at her own infinite nature. That's a beautiful line, that this entire world, the whole universe, is to us a writing of the infinite in the language of the finite. Therefore, bhaktas, devotees of God, make use of all the common terms associated with the common love of humanity in relation to God and his worship through love. Some of the great writers on para bhakti have tried to understand and experience this divine love in so many different ways. The lowest form in which this love is apprehended is what they call the peaceful, the shānta. So remember, we're going to speak of this love, which is an unspeakable divine love. And so we're going to use human understandings, human language to do it. So we're going to typify, if you will, this love. And so the first type, if you will, of divine love can be understood as shānta bhava. So shānta bhava, I'll put it in the chat here. Shānta bhava means the peaceful attitude. I'm going to translate bhava here as attitude. So we can call it the peaceful attitude. Yeah, so I'll put it in the chat. Or the peaceful state, or the peaceful emotion. When a man worships God without the fire of love in him, without its madness in his brain, when his love is just the calm, commonplace love, a little higher than mere forms and ceremonies and symbols, but not at all characterized by the madness of intensely active love, it is said to be shānta. So a very beautiful way of describing this. Shānta is a calm, common love that is not at all characterized by the madness of intensely active love. We see some people in the world who like to move on slowly, and others who come and go like the whirlwind. It's a really remarkable comparison. He's saying the shānta bhakta is calm, peaceful, and gentle. Here I want to make a very important point about shānta bhava. Look, he says, it's a little higher than mere forms and ceremonies and symbols. So shānta bhava is still higher than the worship of God through ceremonies, forms, and symbols. So again, I point you to the distinction between gauni or vaidhi bhakti, as it's called on one side, and para bhakti on the other side. Gauni bhakti, which is bhakti with qualities, or vaidhi bhakti, which is bhakti with form or rules, is the lower form of devotion. So here, we're very particular about rules and the way to do puja and how to chant the mantra, and you have to observe these particular fasts on these particular days. There are observances, vratas. There are structures and systems and syllabuses and forms. Syllabi? Forms, like kind of thing, you know. And it's there to support the mind and to help the mind cultivate love. So the next step is therefore shānta bhava. So shānta bhava is when that para bhakti first begins to arise in the heart, which actually is premised upon the conviction of God's inherent being. So God is pure non-dual existence, or God in any other form. You have to first intuit that reality. And the intuiting of that reality requires all these forms and symbols. So the guarantee of Hinduism is not like, oh, believe in God. It's like, no, Baba, don't believe in God. That sounds horrible, because if you believe in God, it's not going to work. It's just, you should have experience of God. Only until you experience God can you have any right to talk about God and to be a bhakta. How can you love something you never yourself experienced, that other people are talking about but that you yourself cannot verify? So instead, what the bhakti tradition gives us is a scientific procedure. They give us tools. So do this puja every single day, chant this mantra 3 times a day, sit in this way, observe these fasts and these holy days, and then see what happens, Baba. So the only thing that's being asked for now is not faith in God. That's a huge thing. That's something that takes a lot of preparation. But just faith in the practices, faith in the technique, in the procedure. And then we look at our gurus, we look at the people who love God, and we say, it looks like it's worked for them. So maybe I'll just give it a go. Just like how we believe the gym will make us physically strong, so too we can believe that the practices of bhakti will make us feel God's existence. We don't know that they will, but we at least have a bit of working faith in the beginning. Not in God, but just in ourselves, in our teacher, and in the practices. So we have to have this basic shraddha of this like feeling that like, okay, look, our teachers are not out to deceive us. And that's why choosing a good teacher is important. If the teacher wants to get money from you, then you can't have faith in the procedure. Because then you'll think, well, maybe the teacher is just presenting these things to get my money. How do I know the procedure really works? In fact, like Tom Brady will say, the reason he's successful is because of his supplements, his vitamins, no? And as Team Scotland in the World Championships debate in Serbia in 2024 pointed out, why did Tom Brady say this? Because he's selling the supplements, right? Team Scotland was like, guess who's selling the supplements? Tom Brady. Obviously, Tom Brady is going to say, well, I'm successful because of my supplements. So again, if you see there's some kind of vested interest and some kind of marketing going on, then it's hard to trust the procedure. So therefore, the guru must be pure, and the motive of the guru must be out of compassion, out of love. So when the guru has nothing to gain or nothing to lose, then we can have faith in the guru and in the guru's methods. But secondly, the guru must also be spiritually evolved. Because if it hasn't worked for the guru, why should it work for me? So if I look at the guru and I think this person is convinced of God's existence, I'm not. Okay, no problem. Let me just do what that person did in order to become convinced of God. And so the guru says, okay, do this puja, I did it, my guru did it, my guru's guru did it, and by doing it, you will have faith in God. You'll have not faith, but a conviction in God's existence. So therefore, a working faith in the teacher is required. Hence, a pure teacher is recommended. Working faith in yourself is required. Hence, living in the world for a little while and developing a strong sense of self, a sense of self-control, a sense of discipline, a sense of capability. That's important because you have to have faith in yourself. You might believe in the teacher, but you might not believe in yourself. And then nothing will happen for you. So Swami Vivekananda said, you Hindus, you believe in 33 million gods. Why can't you believe in yourself? That's a very remarkable point, actually. Why believe in this God, that God? Shouldn't you just believe in yourself? And that's a nice thing, that you can't really believe in God until you first believe in yourself. You must first be strong. So start with the self. Never mind God first. That's why Swamiji says, don't say God, say I. Because that's the beginning of religion, actually. Be strong. And only the strong can worship God. That's why in many religions, the tradition is premised upon first disempowering the individual, which just won't do. Only a strong, well-rested, healthy individual will be able to pursue God. So Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, a person who sleeps too much or a person who sleeps too little, I have to take this to heart, cannot be a yogi. A person who eats too much or a person who fasts too much cannot be a yogi. So this is something like the Buddha's middle way, maybe. You can think it's echoing something like that, that we should be moderate in everything, including perhaps even spiritual practice, in a sense. So having said all of that, the yogi must be strong and the bhakta must be strong. So believe in yourself first. Believe in your teacher, but most of all, believe in yourself. And then believe in the method. So that's the only thing that's required of us. The only faith, the only working faith that is required to start Bhakti Yoga is faith in the teacher, faith in yourself, faith in the procedure, which implies also faith in the broader tradition. So it's worked for my teacher, but it's also something that's been corroborated by many teachers. So it's not idiosyncratic. It's not just my teacher who's doing this. But actually there are innumerable people who are all attesting to this procedure. That's why Swami Vivekananda and Sri Ramakrishna will always root what they're saying in the scriptures. Notice, they're not like a charismatic guru type that just says whatever and speaks from their experience. Be very careful, fam. A guru is not necessarily someone who speaks from their experience, because there's always a danger in being idiosyncratic when you speak from your experience. Actually, it's a good thing. Sharing is good. We all of us come together so that we can share our own unique perspectives and learn from one another. But none of us can teach from our own perspective. In fact, in debate, we are told not to use anecdotal examples in order to prove an argument, because the anecdote might only apply to me. A better argument would be something more peer-reviewed, something more corroborated. And so one beautiful thing about coming together and sharing is that we can corroborate stuff. Something worked for me. Wait, it's also working for you? And it's also working for you? Oh my God, that must mean that it works. But you guys, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. This is the argument of the Indian spiritual tradition. There's literally 9,000 years of well-recorded, peer-reviewed corroboration. That means for 9,000 years, sincere spiritual practitioners who had nothing to gain or lose from one another got together around the fire in a circle and swapped experiences. And they've refined, over the 9,000 years that they've been doing this, a system. And that system is supposed to be peer-reviewed, and it's survived because it works. So back then, the only way to like transmit a text is to memorize it. Why would you memorize it if it wasn't meaningful to you? Secondly, the only way to preserve a text beyond memorizing it was to record it. But you would only record those sections of the text that mean something to you. Meaning, there's a sort of selective bias in the literature. The literature that survived and made it to us today is probably that literature, which is the creme de la creme of literature. So the stuff that didn't work was tossed out. And the stuff that did work, this is the assumption at least, was preserved. Obviously, there are sociological, political forces also at play. So this is not entirely true in a vacuum. There are many reasons why a particular text survives and another text doesn't. I'm sure like lots of really great texts have died out, and some pretty terrible texts for political and sociological reasons have survived. So that's definitely true. That's a disclaimer. But by and large, we can say we have quite a bit of these texts, and therefore we have a lot of evidence. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to like figure everything out from ground zero. If I want to use electricity in my house, I don't have to like build an entire grid. I can take advantage of all the great electricians that have come before me. I can innovate, but I can build off what they first built. That's the idea. So now there is a peer-reviewed, corroborated scriptural tradition, and that is being given to us by our guru, who has benefited from it, and it's coming to us in the form of a procedure. When we have faith in ourselves and faith in the procedure, we can start the path of Bhakti Yoga. This stage is called Gauni Bhakti or Vaidhi Bhakti. That is to say, it's the devotion with form and with rules. Note, no conviction of God is necessary for this, and probably none is present. You're just doing the things that your guru told you to do. But as a result of doing this, sooner or later, the guarantee is this: something will awaken in your heart, if it hasn't already before you started this practice. And that will be a settled and decided conviction in the presence of blank. Narada refuses to define what this is. Dare we say God? I mean, that's a very loaded term. So you don't have to say God. Just say the divine or the sacred or whatever. This is obviously not something that is very easy to describe because it becomes politicized very quickly. So something happens in the heart. This is called para bhakti. So now when we talk about shānta bhava, we're already talking about para bhakti. So it's presumed at this point in the study that we've done, at least on the level of theory, like lots of practice, and we've done all the Gauni Bhakti stuff, perhaps. Not necessarily, but most likely. Now we get this first feeling. So that's why Swamiji says, it's a little higher than mere forms and ceremonies and symbols, but not at all characterized by the madness of intensely active love. So Shanta Bhava is one step above Gauni Bhakti, but in a sense it's the lowest rung of the ladder, insofar as we're going to be hierarchical about this, in the process of Para Bhakti, supreme love of God. So we see some people in the world who like to move on slowly, and others who come and go like the whirlwind. Obviously, the whirlwind example here is Sri Ramakrishna, and we can think of intense, passionate mystics like that, who really loved God with a burning fervor. We find them in every tradition. Saint John of the Cross, Saint Francis, we find in the Sufi tradition, Rumi, and of course Hafiz, and all these people. So all over history, or in all cultures, you see people who are like whirlwind type people, and also other people who are very calm and measured, and they like to go at things quite slowly. And again, that's not wrong. It's just that Shanta Bhakta is calm, peaceful, and gentle. Okay, now look what Swamiji says. The next higher type. So he's using the Vaishnava hierarchy of bhavas here. So there are 5 bhavas. The first is called Shanta Bhava, the peaceful attitude. And hierarchically, it's the lowest. It's still pretty good. Don't make a mistake, because on this level, you still, have a conviction of God's existence, and you peacefully love him or her or it. So you feel a sense of awe. So in the Vaishnava Bhakti world, they use this in a kind of sectarian way. So they say, you see, this is the kind of love experienced by people who are attached to the formless, impersonal aspect of God. They don't need form, ceremonies, and rituals. They've attained a very high state. But according to us, it's the lowest state in this realm of Para Bhakti, because it's just kind of like peaceful, it's spacious, it's very diffuse and indeterminate. It's not as good as worshipping God with form. So the Vaishnava Bhaktas, the tradition of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, has used this argument in a very sectarian way against people who worship the formless God. But I think that's an immature handling of the idea, if I may say so myself. It's not about formless or with form, personal or impersonal. There are people who worship God with form, but who are Shanta Bhava type people. They like God. God is okay, but it's just one of the many things in my list of priorities. And I feel peacefully in awe of God. I'm reverent of God, but I'm not like burning with love and longing for God. And yet, conversely, there are people who don't even believe in God, who are burning like a whirlwind of fire for truth. They're on fire with the quest to realize what they are and who they are. They might be devotees of the impersonal, formless, the nirguna aspect of Brahman. So Ramana Maharshi even defined devotion as a single pointed attention to the self. So that kind of thing can be just as powerful and intense. So it's not about personal or impersonal, formless or without form. Don't think about the object here. Think about the bhava. I think that's a very helpful way, you guys, of conceptualizing these 5 bhavas. Don't think about what kind of God it naturally implies, but rather think about the feeling state that that person has for God, however he or she or they might define it. So therefore, a person might have shānta bhava even to God with form. I think that's important. It's not a given that just because you think God is Krishna, you will somehow feel the fervor and devotion that Radharani felt. And it's not a given that just because you think God is Nirguna Brahman, that you will somehow be like docile and calm and not at all that motivated, you see. So Shanta Bhava just means the peaceful attitude. And now look, Swamiji says, the next higher type is that of dāsya, which means servantship. It comes when a man thinks he is the servant of the Lord. The attachment of the faithful servant unto the master is his ideal. So of course, Shanta Bhava has an example, and the example here is the rishis who loved Rama, but in this like non-dual way. So the rishis didn't want to worship Rama in form. They preferred to worship Rama as the formless. So they were meditating in samadhi on the formless aspect of Rama. So in the Vaishnava world, that's said to be Shanta Bhava. Then in the Vaishnava world, the ultimate paragon of Dāsya Bhava, and I'll put that over here. Das means servant. So Dāsya Bhava, the paragon of Dāsya, so the servant's attitude. So the paragon of this is, can anybody guess? Who is the best servant of God that has ever been spoken of in Indian literature? In a sense, Vivekananda, but I mean more classically. From the Puranic world, from the epic world, Hanuman, exactly. No one has loved God as a servant more intensely, perhaps, in Indian literature than Hanuman from the Ramayana. So he's considered to be the Paradhasa, the supreme devotee of God. He's Ram Das, the devotee of Ram. And he loves God the way a servant will love his master, the way a faithful attendant will love his liege lord, like that. So it's the servant's attitude, and it's considered to be higher than Shanta Bhava because it's more personal. So again, you can see slight sectarian hierarchicalizations can occur here, where the more personal your love, the better. But again, I think you can still be a servant of the impersonal absolute. You can be a servant of truth. Why does truth have to be Krishna in form? See, Krishna could just stand for Brahman, and you could be a servant of Brahman. Why not? So again, I hope you can see what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to push back against the Gaudiya Vaishnava sectarian desire to hierarchicalize this whole thing based on impersonal to personal, or based on formless to form. I think God can be both form and formless. God can be both impersonal and personal, both Nirguna Brahman and Saguna Brahman. We accept it all. Although the Advaitins might give us the middle finger, we give them the high five. Or although the Bhaktas might give us the middle finger, we give them the high five. That's the idea. They might not come into our churches, but we'll go into theirs. So that's the policy that we have in our tradition. We just try to accept it all. It's a capacious, all-inclusive view. That being said, we should be careful when we make these hierarchies not to also hierarchicalize the various traditions and their own unique conceptions of God. So having said that, I think it's important to look at Dāsya Bhava not necessarily as seeing God as more personal than in the case of the Shanta Bhakta, but rather feeling a more personal intimacy with God. Which doesn't mean that God is personal. You just feel a bit closer by virtue of being God's servant. So if you spend your whole life teaching Advaita Vedanta, spreading the message of Nirguna Brahman, you could still have this Dāsya Bhava. So anyway, Hanuman is the example that comes to mind. Sri Ramakrishna practiced this Dāsya Bhava. He pretended to be Hanuman. And in fact, to pretend to be Hanuman meant that he acted like a monkey. He literally hopped around everywhere like a monkey. He literally made monkey noises and literally lived in a tree and subsisted on fruits. And they say, the legend is, his tail grew. His coccyx allegedly grew a little bit. It's like kind of like the stigmata you always hear in the Christian tradition of like the saints developing blood on their palms, feet, and forehead. Because they're meditating on the Christ, they physically start to resemble the Christ. So, for Trans Awareness Day, this is a very important point. The body is fluid, it's flexible, it responds to the mind. So when a person feels themselves to be a particular gender, if they feel themselves to be that strongly enough, whether or not they've had any medical procedures or taken any kind of hormone, the body will actually resemble that thing. Of course, they can supplement and help with the physical procedures too, but it is possible with your mind to change the shape of your body. As we saw with the Christian stigmatist, right? Is that what you call them? Those who got the stigmata? Stigmatist? I don't want to imply that they were stigmatizing people, but they got the stigma, they got the signs, right? Anyway, it's also true of people like Sri Ramakrishna, who believed himself to be Hanuman so strongly that his Cossacks actually grew a bit. He legit grew a tail. Also, he menstruated. When he was thinking that he was Sri Radha, and he practiced being Radha, he would wear saris and jewelry and affect all the mannerisms of a woman. And by cross-dressing so intensely, by believing himself to be a woman so intensely, he menstruated. He grew breasts. So the idea here is, to practice dāsya bhava, you could just imitate, if you want, the greatest das, meaning servant of God ever, Hanuman. So you can have that Hanuman bhava, if you will. Okay, but you don't have to. You can also have Vivekananda bhava. So I myself am very, very, very fond of dāsya bhava. It's one of my very cherished bhavas, the feeling of being God's servant. Once Swami Vivekananda said, do you know what I am? Or he said, do you know what we are, brothers? We are the servant of the servants of Sri Ramakrishna. And then he said, if I want, I can chew up the stars. I can unhinge the three worlds and cast them into the void. Isn't that a beautiful idea? It gives you strength. Rather than being this disempowering, groveling sort of thing, to be God's servant, you have to have strength. To be Hanuman, to do the will of Rama, you have to be able to jump across an entire ocean. You have to be able to fight an entire army. You have to be able to single-handedly burn down a city. To be a good servant, you must have the Ashta Siddhis, the 8 occult powers, arguably, which Hanuman was endowed with. But unlike some power-drunk sorcerer, Hanuman used all of his faculties, all of his power for the service of God. So if you're a great painter, paint in the name of God. Whatever your skills and talents are, employing them with energy, vigor, enthusiasm in the service of God, that's called dāsya bhava. I bet many missionaries feel this way too. All preachers, arguably missionaries of every faith, feel this dāsya bhava. So we feel ourselves to be in the apostolic age of Sri Ramakrishna. If nothing else, we are apostles of Sri Ramakrishna, but not of the man. Make no mistake, we are not apostles of any particular religion or any particular religious figure. We are apostles of the message and the message alone, which can be understood from a Christian point of view, from a Buddhist point of view, however you'd like to understand it. But the message is, enough with sectarianism, enough with thinking your way alone is right and everyone else is wrong, enough with hierarchicalization, thinking that everyone is less right than you are, enough with this idea that God must be X and not Y. So that's the message that we're trying to preach. More importantly, the innate divinity of the soul and Advaita, the oneness of all existence, which is inclusive of Dvaita and the qualified Dvaita, Advaita, Beda, it's called. Anyway, so having said that, this feeling of being an apostle of Christ or of Buddha, of Sri Ramakrishna, can be called dāsya bhava. So Vivekananda certainly had it. It was on his master's command that he came to the West and tirelessly preached the message and broke his body and mind in doing so. So the energy that we get to do this work comes from the enthusiasm of feeling ourselves to be God's servant. So you think, oh, this is Ramakrishna's work. I better take this box and carry this box from point X to point Y. And when I do that, I'm doing it for Ramakrishna. I'm doing his work. I'm his servant, like that. That's called dāsya bhava. It's one of my favorite bhavas, and it's arguably the bhava that I would argue is my work uniform. So when I go to work, that is to say, when I do the thing that I do in life, I'm a das, I'm a servant of God, and I do it with this bhava. And so dāsya bhava can also be understood in the guru-shisha context. So if you see God as your guru, you can also relate to God with the dāsya bhava. After all, the disciple of the guru is an attendant, a sevak of the guru. So you can look upon God as your guru. So you can think of God as Shiva or as whoever you like, Kali as your teacher, and then you feel that you are her servant in the sense that you are her disciple. So dāsya bhava is also nice because of my Jupiter placement. I have a very strong affinity for the guru. So I have a lot of guru bhakti. The reason I bring up all these anecdotes about my own personal experience with bhakti is to point out that these are all factors that are unique to each and every one of us, and these bhavas might not be hierarchical. They might just refer to the kind of person that you are. And so, for instance, because I have a certain Jupiter placement in my chart, astrologically I'm predisposed to reverencing especially older men. So a guru for me is naturally going to be my grandfather. My grandfather was my first guru, and my guru now is very much like my grandfather. But because of that, dāsya bhava comes naturally. Because of that Jupiter placement. If you don't have that Jupiter placement, or if your placement is different, you might not feel like God's servant or God's disciple, and that's okay. So to kind of break up this idea of hierarchicalization, I just want to throw in my chips for dāsya bhava, which is one of my favorite bhavas and the bhava that I tend to spend much of my time in. So you might like this bhava also, the Hanuman bhava, the Vivekananda bhava. See, Digambari Ma. Nice to hear from you, baby. So yes, so whatever your placements are might actually influence what kind of bhava you have. So Guru Bhakti comes very naturally to the dāsya bhava kind of people. So anyway, this is a bhava that's good for work. If you're the kind of person who likes to do karma yoga, it's a good bhava. If you have that kind of proclivity. Okay, the next type. The next type of love is sakya, friendship. Saki means friend. Thou art our beloved friend. Just as a man opens his heart to his friend and knows that the friend will never chide him for his faults, but will always try to help him. Just as there is the idea of equality between him and his friend, so equal love flows in and out between the worshipper and his friendly God. Now the reason sakya, friend attitude, is considered higher than dasya is because dasya has a sort of asymmetry to it. The master is powerful. The servant is also powerful, but the servant is subordinate or subservient to the master. So you can see that master-servant dynamic is inherently asymmetrical, right? Now Sri Ramakrishna makes the argument that actually all the power is in the hands of the servant. He says that, Hanuman was able to jump across the ocean using Rama's name. But Rama, God himself, Rama needed to build a bridge. So God's servant is more powerful than God, because God's servant is imbued with the enthusiasm for God, which arguably makes the devotee more powerful than even the object of the devotee's love. The love is more important in some cases than the beloved. So you can make an argument along those lines and say that, like, okay, it's not an asymmetry. But for the most part, I think if we're going to be honest, the master-servant relationship, it smacks of asymmetry. God is the master, I am the servant. So obviously God is great and I am also great, but not as great, obviously. Right? That's the attitude I like. I like the feeling of that God is great and God is powerful, and however powerful I am, and I feel myself to be very powerful and very full of energy, I know that it's only God's power. That's Dasya Bhava, but there's still an asymmetry, right? Now I don't dare practice Sakya Bhava. It's just not, it doesn't yet feel right to me. The idea of seeing God as my equal. I don't yet feel that. But some people, through a lot of spiritual practice, become so saint-like, so divine, that they have this sort of buddy-buddy pal relationship with God. They feel a sort of symmetry with God, a sameness with God. So you can see you're coming closer to Advaita, you could even say, because the difference between you and God is diminishing. You know? So your feeling towards God is also not one of, I'm over here and she's over there. It's more like, no, we're kind of like sort of on the same level almost, in a sense, right? And here we feel that God is our trusted friend who we can confide in, who will never chide us for our faults, but who will always try to help us. And more importantly, God is our playmate. So this is a playful attitude. You can get this idea that I'm playing with God, actually. God is my friend. So here we have the case of Krishna and Sudama. Actually, we have the case of Krishna and Balarama, his brother. But my favorite example is Krishna and Arjuna. They really are like bros. You know, they go to the gym together, they fight wars together, they even like flirt with girls together. I kid you not, in the Mahabharata, there are scenes where like Arjuna, he's like shy to go and like, you know, seduce this particular woman, and then Krishna is like, come on, bro. And then Krishna actually does this whole wingman thing and helps him get that bride. You know, so it's very interesting how they have this like college dorm room bro relationship almost, the two of them, like fist bumping and whatnot. Krishna and Arjuna, they're childhood friends. Yeah, he's the Adi wingman. I love that. God is your Adi wingman. But like thinking of God as a friend is something that Swami Vivekananda towards the end of his life expressed a lot. So remember how I read you that letter some time ago where Swamiji was saying, "Aye, Saki, fill the cup, let us be mad. Ever yours in madness, Vivekananda." There he says, God is the funniest chap you ever saw. The way he says that, right? He's the funniest chap you ever saw. I'm his playmate and I'm just playing. So the idea of playing and God being your playmate and both of you being friends that confide in one another and just have fun together and live life in a sort of symmetrical way, equals almost, that's called Sakya Bhava. And so here it says, equal love flows in and out between the worshipper and his friendly God. Thus, God becomes our friend, the friend who is near, the friend to whom we may freely tell all the tales of our lives. The innermost secrets of our hearts we may place before him with the great assurance of safety and support. He is the friend whom the devotee accepts as an equal. God is viewed here as our playmate. There's the idea. We may all say that we are playing in this universe. Just as children play their games, just as the most glorious kings and emperors play their own games, so is the beloved Lord himself in sport with this universe. He is perfect. He does not want anything. Why should he create? Activity is always with us for the fulfillment of a certain want, and want always presupposes imperfection. God is perfect. He has no wants. Why should he go on with this work of an ever-active creation? What purpose has he in view? The stories about God creating this world for some end or other that we imagine are good as stories, but not otherwise. So these are all false. From the philosophical point of view, the idea that God creates the world is problematic, because why would God do it? Is God imperfect? Is God lacking in anything that he should do this or do that? So God cannot create with any desire in mind except play. So the thing that you do for its own sake without any desire for outcome or fear of consequence is called play. So the only way that God could be related to the world is in play. This is Leela. There's nothing serious here. There's no work to be done, no mission to accomplish. So in this feeling, you don't feel like you need to do a mission. You just feel like playing and having fun with God, who himself is also playing and having fun with the universe. It is all really in sport. The universe is his play going on. The whole universe must, after all, be a big piece of pleasing fun to him. I love that. The whole universe must be a big piece of pleasing fun to him. Now, don't think this is an easy attitude. Look at the wars happening in the world. Look straight at all the horrors that people are experiencing in the world, and then try to make this statement. You see, it's not an easy statement to make. First of all, to feel that you are equal to God is very hard once you understand how great God is. I mean, if you have no concept of God, no inner feeling of God, then you can say, no problem. God is just a figment of your imagination. I'm equal to it. But if, as a result of your bhakti practices, you've had the hint of God's power, then it's very hard to say that you are equal to God. It just won't feel right. It won't feel natural for someone who has glimpsed God to say, I am equal to God. Accept that you are. You are equal to God. In fact, you are God. But to actually honestly feel that on the deepest emotional level of your being, it might not come so easily to one and to all. Some people are lucky. By grace, they have that feeling. But if you really understand God and feel her power, you'll be very careful about saying you're her equal. And so you probably won't say I'm God's equal. And the argument in the Sakya Bhava passage is that, like, God's playing in the universe, which is also very difficult to say when you're confronted with the problem of evil. So I just want you to know that this Sakya Bhava implies a very high state of spiritual maturity, which even Swami Vivekananda only really attained, arguably, from this point of view, towards the end of his life. So after doing most of his work, most of the mission in Dāsya Bhava, he then transitioned in the end of his life into something resembling Sakya Bhava, where he would say, I, Saki, I, friend, fill the cup. He's talking to God. Hey God, fill my cup. Let us drink. Let us be mad. Ever yours in madness, Vivekananda. The Lord is the funniest chap you ever saw. We're all clowns tumbling around in this circus. Like that bhava of looking at the horror of the world and saying it's okay. You know what Swamiji said? He said, I would hug the devil himself if I saw him. You know, some people are very angry in America. Incredibly angry. To understand Swamiji's mood, you have to remember, he went to the UK at this point. Remember, the English people are hated for the most part in India at this time because they were the quote-unquote oppressors, and they did some pretty nasty things to Indians. Now Vivekananda, the great patriot and lover of India, is on Indian soil. In one letter he said, no one ever landed on the shores of this country with more hatred in his heart than me. He said that, you know. Can you imagine how he must feel? And I think many Americans can imagine how he feels. A lot of Americans are very dissatisfied with the current political climate. The only reason I bring this up is because you must understand the mood that Swamiji was in when he was in this place, when he was writing this letter. First, he came to England feeling maybe in his heart the natural feeling of anger at an oppressor. You know, and then he said, at the end of all of this, the reason he said that though is because in this letter he said, and now I love the people of London. I love the people of the UK. He had a 180 change, you know. But in this letter, he said, I no longer see colonization as an evil. I see it as a great machine, and I mean to put my ideas at the very center and spread it broadcast around the world. He had a complete change of view about the British colonial project. And he said this, I would hug the very devil himself, if there are any, if there were any. So he doesn't even believe there's evil people anymore. So my question to people who are very hateful of the current political climate, would you hug your president? Some of you couldn't bear the thought. So don't talk of Sakya Bhava, because in Sakya Bhava you love one and all, seeing them equally as God. You might still take political action to protect people, but you no longer have this vitriol. And if you want to do this political action of protecting people, Dāsya Bhava seems more appropriate, no? because you feel there's something serious, some mission, some kind of work. But when you get to this level of spiritual intoxication, mark my words, you won't feel like doing anything for anyone. In that sense, you'll just feel like playing with God, which might be a blessing to the world, but usually this happens at the end of a saint's mission. So Vivekananda, if he had this Sakya Bhava in the beginning, he might not have even come to America and taught all this stuff, you know. He might have just wandered and frolicked with God here and there. So some people are just like that from the beginning. They don't have any mission, they don't have any work. Everywhere they go, they just look at the beauty of the world, they look at the horrors of the world, and they clap their hands and say, "Thy will be done, O Lord, thy will be done." Sakya Bhava is very exalted. It's very beautiful, and it's a state. Remember, bhakti is not something you do, it's an energetic state, which you have to cultivate through long, hard practice. Once you attain this configuration of prana, you can't but help see the world as God's play. You can't but help feel yourself to be God's equal. And naturally then, your feeling is, it's all in sport. The universe is his play going on. The whole universe must, after all, be a big piece of pleasing fun to him, including all the wars and horror. If you are poor, enjoy that fun. If you are rich, enjoy the fun of being rich. If dangers come, it is also good fun. If happiness comes, there is more good fun. The world is just a playground, and we are here having good fun, having a game, and God is with us playing all the while, and we are with him playing. Exalted. So if you can see all of your life as fun, then you're playing Sakya Bhava, you know. It's a wonderful thing. And so there's one incident where Swamiji experienced this Sakya Bhava. He came back to the boat in Kashmir. He worshipped all the women with marigolds, and he said, "No more Hari Om. Now it's only the mother now. No more mission." He said, "Enough with patriotism, enough with this mission." And all these women, by the way, they're Americans, they're Londoners. They'd like literally given up all their money for Swamiji's mission and followed him all the way halfway across the world to India to do Swamiji's mission. And now he's saying, "No more mission, I have no mission, I don't want to do anything, I just want to play with God." They're like, what the fuck? They were really worried, you know. And he disappeared. He jumped off the houseboat and ran away, actually. It's a very troubling time for Sister Nivedita and the others. She writes in a reminiscence. She was there, and she says he would just disappear, and nobody would know where he was for a long time. He was playing. The whole world was sport for him. But Sri Ramakrishna didn't let him come into this state until the literally last few years of his life. Literally last like 2 years of his life. Only then he started to experience this divine madness. Until then, he was experiencing something, I think, arguably like dāsya bhava. Working, doing the Lord's will. But then he stopped working and he started playing. So, God is our eternal playmate. That's the idea, Sakya Bhava. How beautiful he is playing. The play is finished when the cycle comes to an end. There is rest for a shorter or longer time. Again, all come out and play. It is only when you forget that it is all play and that you are also helping in the play, it is only then that misery and sorrows come. Then the heart becomes heavy. Then the world weighs upon you with tremendous power. But as soon as you give up the serious idea of reality as the characteristic of the changing incidents of the 3 minutes of life and know it to be but a stage on which we are playing, helping him to play, at once misery ceases for you. So notice this, until you see it as a play, misery and sorrows come. Then the heart becomes heavy. Isn't that how many people feel now? They look at all the wars going on in the world, they look at the political environment that they're in, and their heart feels heavy. The world becomes a weight, and it weighs upon us with tremendous power. So what you need to do in Sakya Bhava is to give this up. As soon as you give up the serious idea of reality as the characteristic of the changing incidents of the 3 minutes of life. So this life is nothing, 3 minutes only, flash in the pan. Once you understand that, you put everything into perspective, and then it says that you know it to be but a stage on which we are playing, helping him to play. At once misery ceases for you. He plays in every atom. He is playing when he is building up earths and suns and moons. He is playing with the human heart, with animals, with plants. We are his chessmen. He puts the chessmen on the board and shakes them up. He arranges us first in one way and then in another, and we are consciously or unconsciously helping in his play. Oh bliss, we are his playmates. So Swamiji is going to this bhava. You can see he's like, and oh bliss, and oh bliss. Yes, the misery and sorrow are part of the play. And you enjoy it. That's the idea. So he's saying here, right, like, if you are poor, enjoy being poor. Enjoying the fun. If you are rich, enjoy the fun of being rich. If danger comes, enjoy that fun. If happiness comes, there is more good fun. So similarly, if misery and sorrow comes, you'll have fun. But arguably, you won't feel miserable and sorrowful because the whole thing is light. It's like how an actor experiences sorrow and misery, but not how we do. It's like that. Like a person watching a horror movie would experience it like in a different way, you know, like that. So actually, in this state, you'll be cheerful, you'll be joyful. Doesn't mean you won't be beset with danger. Doesn't mean you won't feel a kind of weight, but it won't be heavy for you. It'll be just like an actor playing her role on stage. His role, their role on stage. Beautiful, no? Not easy though. very exalted, easy to talk about, difficult to live, to rejoice at everything, knowing that it's all God's play. And plus, this view presupposes that you've zoomed out enough to see God's creating the universe and God's creating the, so then the wars in the world seem so insignificant compared to the entire solar systems that are blinking out of existence, right? There are entire worlds that are being destroyed right now in this universe. And it's funny because the way that we mourn is also interesting. There are many places in the world where terrible things are happening. There's like a secession in Sudan, and there's this whole conflict in South Sudan, but not really very interesting to us because the media attention is in a different place. There's a lot of suffering in the world, but look, we don't suffer it because we zoom out or we zoom in. Similarly, we suffer the things that we suffer because we're paying attention to it in this way. But when we zoom out, presumably because our spiritual practices have given us a very broad view, we don't really feel it all to be suffering. We feel it to be perfect. Although we might act, but we're chessmen, you see? So God is just putting chessmen, chess women, chess people this way, that way, you do your thing, they do their thing, blah, blah, blah. It's all just having fun. Okay, I'm going to stop there today. The next is known as vatśalya, loving God not as our father, but as our child. So I don't want to start this discussion now because it'll take quite a bit of time. It's a very exalted state. And honestly, I don't think I have the adhikari. I'm just going to read what Swamiji says, but I don't have the spiritual competence to properly explain to you vatśalya bhava. Why? Because I don't really practice it. And more importantly, I have to acknowledge how exalted it is. I don't even practice sakya bhava. God forbid, I haven't even attained that state. How can I talk about vatśalya bhava? What do I know really of vatśalya bhava or Madhura bhava? So I'm just going to make that disclaimer now. I know nothing of those states of bhakti. They are well beyond me. You know how Gandalf says, "Fly, you fools." He says that's like, this foe is beyond you all. That's how I feel about these higher stages of bhakti. So I'm just going to be content to talk about shānta bhava and dāsya bhava. That I know. But I think even sakya bhava, I can sort of glimpse it, I can feel what it's like, but in all humility, honestly, I don't know anything about sakya bhava. It's something that Swami Vivekananda himself felt towards the end of his life. I have to admit that I haven't fully mastered or even glimpsed really that state yet. It's profound, it's exalted, and it excites me to think that there are these further stages in bhakti. So you can say, once you know that you are Shiva, spiritual life can start. For many people, that's the end. Oh, I'm consciousness done. Finished with that. No, for us, no, now that we know we're Shiva, now we think about how we relate to Shakti, and you can't help but be in love with God. But the problem is that love can also be deeper or lesser depending on how close to God we feel and how at peace with the world that we are. So if I really felt sakya bhava, I might not be this motivated to do this work. In other words, I won't feel so inspired to give lecture after lecture after lecture. I'll be a bit more relaxed with it, Probably give a few less lectures, probably be even later to them, I probably speak slower. That's one thing. If I'm speaking very slowly and it sounds like I have no point to prove, or if it sounds like I'm not in a hurry, I've probably, I did it. Your boy did it. You'll be like, okay, he did it. He's finally relaxed. He has no stakes anymore. He's playing with God. I'm not yet there. I'm God's servant and I have a mission and I have no time. That's the feeling, the apostolic fervor of dāsya bhava. It's like I imagine John Coltrane in his earlier records. He played very quickly. But then later, in Kind of Blue, in Miles Davis's Kind of Blue, John Coltrane is like, he's like really just got a lot to say. But then in Giant Steps, he says so much with so little. There's more silence, there's more space. He's got into a deeper state of his love for music. So I think that's true of spiritual teachers too. They get to a state where they become very silent, very still, because they have nothing to do anymore. Arguably, now their job is just to play with God. Their attitude has changed. Swami Brahmananda used to say, I get in a particular state where I don't know who the teacher and who the student is anymore. Who will teach what and to whom? And when he's in that state, he just stops acting. But we say the master has kept a little bit of maya in us, a little bit of ambition, a little bit of energy, a little bit of desire, something like that. Oh my God, Sai, you okay? All great fun, sakya bhava. It's like, aha! Yeah, so we think, okay, when we're finished doing Sri Ramakrishna's work, then he'll release us. But until then, the apostolic fervor of the dāsya bhava says, it's okay, I don't need to be liberated. I can be born innumerable times and suffer innumerable hells, if only I get to do the one thing I want to do, which is worship the one God I love, which means to do his work. We are the servants of Sri Ramakrishna. If we wanted to, we could crush the stars between our teeth. We could unhinge the three worlds and hurl it into the void. Such hubris, such pride. That pride is important. The pride of being God's servant. Because without that maya, without that little bit of, let's say, impurity or bondage, you can't really do God's work. You'll just be You can't really do work actually. Karma itself, karma yoga is not possible when that little bit of rajasic temperament is not there. So arguably, God keeps some rajas in us when he desires us to do some work. Why though? Because we're all his chess men and chess women and chess people. She's just setting us all up to knock us all down. I like how Swamiji says, he sets it all up, then she shakes the board. So she's just fucking around. God is just fucking around. That's the idea. But you only realize that in Sakya Bhava. And when you realize that God is fucking around and you attain Sakya Bhava, then you will also fuck around. You'll just Sukamchara, the Ashtavakra Gita says, Sukamchara, wander about, wander about. See. But anyway, let me just close with this. I should go and get ready for Kala Ratri Puja tonight. We're having some guests and it's the Durga Puja, so there's a lot of preparation. So if you don't mind, I have to unfortunately close our time together in just a few moments. Actually, I should have closed our time together 10 minutes ago, but let me just wrap it up now. The last thing I'll say is this. I want to be very careful because, sometimes in the West, in like the neo-Advaitic world, in the neo-tantric world, we're very quick to make big claims. I had samadhi, for instance. Everyone and their dog had samadhi here in the West. When you ask my guru, have you had samadhi? He laughs and says, I don't know what that is, Baba. It's a very exalted state. Here, everyone is the ultimate lover of God. Everyone claims to be Krishna's like consort. I am Radha. Do you even know what that love looks like? Have the Ashta Vikaras manifested in you? Are you displaying the 8 Sattvika Vikaras, the 8 changes, horripilation, crying, tears, rolling on the floor, like not in the sentimental way of frazzled nerves, but in a deep and abiding way? You see, it's easy to claim that you know God if you don't know God. It's easy to claim that you had samadhi if you don't know what the term means. It's easy to claim that you are a bhakta if you haven't yet met bhaktas. But I am Indian, Baba. I have seen bhaktas. I saw my guru. I've seen yogis. Having seen bhaktas, having seen yogis, I understand what it is. To some extent. To what extent it can be understood, I don't know. But I understand that I'm not there. That's as much as I've understood. That whatever I have attained in spiritual life, whatever I've realized, it doesn't come close to the bhaktas that I've seen in my life, the yogis I've seen in my life, the jnanis I've seen in my life. Therefore, we're able to say with conviction, I don't have any jnana. I don't have any bhakti. If you say I have jnana, I have bhakti, it's because you haven't spent much time in India or in a genuine spiritual community where there are people who've devoted their whole life, sometimes lifetime after lifetime to it. So we say in the bhakta's world, humility is very important because it's a progressive spiritual path. And humility is exciting because it means there's always something more to learn. So remember, Tantric Shaivism is not a philosophy of being, it's a philosophy of revelation. There's always something deeper and newer to realize. But of course, that's just saying that there's deeper and deeper love, which is the manifestation of knowledge on the level of the body and mind. So that's enough said for Dāsya and Sakya Bhava. Today we covered Shānta Bhava, Sakya Bhava, and in order, Shānta Bhava, peaceful, serene attitude. That's still pretty good, And Dāsya Bhava, which is the attitude of the servant. And then we have Sakya Bhava, the attitude of seeing God as your playmate and seeing all this as great fun. Next week, we'll cover the vatśalya Bhava. And I'll take an attempt at describing it, though I'm just going to say now I have no idea what it is. And then after that, we'll take Madhura Bhava, which again, I'm just going to admit now I have no idea what that is. To see God as one's lover. That's interesting. Radha could do that. Oof. Very few people come into this world like that. It could be you, though. It could be us. But all in its due course, in God's own time. So that's the next thing. So at the end of this discussion, by the time we get to next week's class, you would have learned about 5 different modes of loving God. And all of these are considered para bhakti. Each one a little more intense, a little more maddening, a little more ecstatic than the other. Okay, so we'll leave it at that. Thank you all so very much. May we all feel intense love for God, each according to our own predisposition. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanam Astu. Jai Makali, Jai Makali, Jai Makali. Okay, I have to say goodbye now. Thank you so much, one and all, for coming. Thank you, Jessica. It's so good to see you. You look radiant. Nice to see your face on the camera usually. Okay, you guys. Thank you. Please take care. Om. Peace, peace, peace. Jai.